Hello and welcome to the St. Charles City County Library. My name is Elizabeth Nelson, the Classes and Events Coordinator. Thank you very much for joining us tonight for the first of 3 Money Smart Mondays with KMOX's Charlie Brennan. Money Smart Mondays are part of Money Smart Month. Every April, the library partners with Money Smart St. Louis to bring free, informative financial literacy classes and events to you. This event is just one of over 75 free Money Smart Month financial education events that are occurring all over the St. Louis metro area. Money Smart Month is a community education initiative sponsored by the St. Louis Regional Financial Empowerment Coalition with in-kind support from United Way of Greater St. Louis. The events are also made possible by funders, including Stifel Bank, Commerce Bank, Midwest Bank Center, and many others. You can find out more at moneysmartstlouis.org. At the library here, we've got a great lineup this year and something for everyone, kids included. Back to tonight and Money Smart Mondays. Charlie is the host of The Charlie Brennan Show with Amy Markskers and provocateur of Donnybrook on KETC TV 9 network of public media. He is a St. Louis Radio Hall of Famer and author of several books about St. Louis. Charlie is a great friend of the library who's been with us for several events over the years, most recently for his book, Only in St. Louis. This evening's Money Smart Mondays guests are Ken and Lori Heise, founders of the Heise Advisory Group. Ken and Lori are independent advisors who offer fiduciary care. Ken is an investment advisor representative and a registered financial consultant, a professional designation given by the International Association of Registered Financial Consultants to financial advisors who meet their standards of education, experience, and integrity. Ken hosts the radio show, Your Retirement Highway, on Sundays at 9:30 a.m. on KMOX 1120. Lori is an investment advisor representative and a licensed insurance producer. Lori oversees all aspects of the business, including day-to-day operations and management. She handles the processing of new accounts and transactions, transferring of funds, and requesting distributions. Lori's true passion is people, including children, and is very involved with the Missouri chapter of Make a Wish. Ken and Lori's book, Your Retirement Highway, How to Set Your Finances on Cruise Control, is available at Main Street Books, our local independent bookstore in St. Charles. We would love to ask Ken and Lori and Charlie your questions, so please post questions and comments in a comment under this Facebook post. And now, without further ado, let's welcome Charlie, Lori, and Ken. Oh, Charlie, you're muted.
Thank you, and sorry, that's a rookie error. I'm sorry to have committed. Whitey Herzog, who wrote the foreword for Ken and Lori's book, would not be impressed. But I wanted to say something. When we, back in February, were thinking about who we should get, we knew we wanted someone for college, paying for college. And we want Ken Lieber from the New York Times. He's going to be with us on the 26th. Next week, we're going to direct it just to young people for Money Smart Month. And we're going to bring in both author Brad Stinn and Adam Grossman from Mayport Financial. But when we needed to get experts to talk about retirement, I knew immediately that I wanted to get the two people who I hear every Sunday morning at 9:30 on KMOX, because their advice is casual, you can understand it, but it is so informative. In fact, that's the one radio show I listen to with a pen and a piece of paper handy, because I get so many good nuggets and strategies from listening to you, Ken, and you, Lori. So thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us for this Facebook Live webinar with the St. Charles City County Library.
Well, absolutely. Thank you for the kind words, Charlie.
Well,
yeah, thank you very much.
I thought that we would revisit an oldie but a goldie. And I don't know if many of the viewers tonight have had the opportunity to hear the 5 myths of retirement, which you have described. But again, I encourage everybody to get out a pen and write some of these down, because they're very informative. And I think that people approaching retirement or in retirement could serve themselves well by listening carefully here. And then a little later, I want to ask you what moves you think retirees might consider if taxes on the horizon might go up and if inflation is a threat in the future. But let's start with some of those myths. And one of them is people believe, Ken and Lori, that they should retire with about 80% of their income. How do you respond to that?
Everybody's retirement goal and everybody's retirement dream is obviously different. We talk often about the thumbprint, if you will. And I'm not a fan really of any of the rules of thumb, because to me, this business is so personal. And we spend a lot of time really trying to get to understand that individual dream. Can you kind of off the cuff when you're younger, kind of use it as a target? Maybe. But really what it revolves around is, what do you want to do? I've done a lot of presentations where I've asked, raise your hands if you want to live on less income than you have today. And no hands go up. And then I ask the following question, how many of you would like to have the same income as you have today? And a couple hands go up. And then I finish with, how many of you would like to have more income in retirement than you have today? And that's where the majority of the people's hands go up. Why? Because we're baby boomers. The baby boomers are retiring. We love to travel. We love to do. We are active and fulfilling, as opposed to maybe the generations before us that were a little more subdued. And maybe that's an old rule of thumb that worked many, many years ago. But this isn't mom and dad's retirement. This is your retirement, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very hard to put, we just talked about this morning, and we were talking about defining that dollar amount and what is your number. And for everybody, it's different. When we do retirement planning, everything is customized to the individual. So Charlie, if you said, I want X amount, I've got X amount saved, you might have saved the same as your brother, your neighbor, but it doesn't mean that your retirement's going to look the same, because what you envision for your retirement is probably pretty different than your family or your neighbors or your coworker. So there is no cookie cutter solution to that.
There's also kind of a myth when it comes, Lori and Ken, to maxing out your 401k. What's the myth that's in many people's minds regarding that?
Well, we've been scared into, from the financial services industry, scared into maxing out and putting as much money into the 401k, because pensions are going away. And the only way you're going to retire is if you build a ton of money into your 401k. And so we've done what we've been taught, and we've kind of fed the beast. I kind of refer to the 401k as the beast. And I do that because we do this all these years in our working lives, not understanding the repercussions of what's going to happen when we retire. We've lived by a myth that has said when you retire, you will be in a lower tax bracket. So you're going to take your deduction on the seeds, if you will, right? What you're putting into your 401k every other week through payroll deduction. And you're going to postpone the taxation of all that money until retirement, when you're quote unquote in that lower tax bracket. Well, what we're finding is people are not in lower tax brackets. They're in the same or potentially higher tax brackets. And when taxes go up over the next number of years and decades, we could really be taking the money out in higher tax brackets than what we put it into, which would be counterproductive. Kind of like if you planted a field in spring, and let's say we're going to plant 100 acres of corn, and I had a choice. Do I pay tax on the seed before I plant, or do I wait until fall after the harvest, and do I pay tax on the harvest? Well, everybody says pay the tax on the seeds, because those seeds are going to be more abundant in the harvest. But yet we've done just the opposite with our 401ks.
And there's kind of a cousin myth to that too, where people say, well, I have a lot of money in my 401k, $500,000, and as a matter of fact, I'm debt-free.
Well, debt-free doesn't include, I think sometimes they forget about, there's a little bit of ownership on that 401k. They forget about the IRS. And we just talked about this again today. We were talking about, wouldn't it be really a great tool if companies provided you with statements showing what you've accumulated in that 401k, but what the potential tax is going to be at whatever date you should retire. And people do forget about it. I've saved 500, I've saved $1 million. Well, yes, you have, but the IRS hasn't collected their payment on any of that you've been contributing for 20 or 30, 40 years. And that's the biggest debt that you have, bigger than your mortgage, bigger than anything you could have is the debt on those pre-tax dollars.
I find it fascinating in just common accounting, when you do a net worth statement, that the full value of your IRA or 401k is listed as an asset. If it were business accounting, the liability of the taxes would have to be brought into the net worth, and it would look very different. But in personal accounting, we don't really show the taxation of those dollars as being a liability, when in fact, the only way that you can get that money out is to do what? Pay the tax. So it's kind of a false sense of security for a lot of people.
Which maybe, Ken and Lori, brings us to another myth, and that is, well, I can always work longer or get a part-time job.
Well, how'd that work during COVID? A lot of people, sadly lost jobs. Places were shut down, businesses were shut down. And, if you were planning on working longer, that might not always be an option. You might feel good, you might love your job, but employers change. And that could be an issue. Your health can change. Part-time jobs, I'm not so sure. I don't think that's generally in most people's retirement plan, is it? Not in their dream retirement.
Yeah, I mean, we hear that, oh, I just want to get a part-time job, or I've thought about volunteering, or I want to, whatever it is they want to do. The purpose of that, Charlie, is more from a pleasure, not a need. And if you need to have a part-time job, then perhaps you need to rethink or make sure that what plan you are implementing or have in place for retirement is going to be successful. Because I don't look at a part-time job as being the solution, nor is that very much security for you if you absolutely need to have that income.
I think a lot of the people that think in terms of those part-time jobs are the ones that are generally in that behavioral, psychological transition of leaving a workplace where I have purpose, where I have friends, I have social time, and I have all this interaction. And then when you retire, all that goes away. And I think they look at it a lot of times as that source of social interaction to kind of, if you will, get out of the house, so to speak. Yeah.
What about the statement, you should not retire until your mortgage is paid off?
My opinion right now, with interest rates where they are, we recently did a remodel job of the house, and we redid our financing, chose to do a 30-year mortgage. And at the interest rate that mortgage is at, I don't want to give that bank a dime of money ahead of time, because I'm not convinced we're going to see these types of interest rates again in our lifetime. So as long as you can account for the cash flow, right? Retirement isn't about how much money you have. To me, retirement is about how much income you have. I know many people that I've seen in the years that live on pension and Social Security and have very little money saved. Now, what I didn't say is their pension and Social Security is also 6 figures. Okay, so it's not that you have to have a ton of money all the time. You just need to have the income that you need to do the things you want on a regular basis. And so the paying off the mortgage comes from years ago. right? When it was mom and dad's retirement. And we
And I
had,
think too, it's a comfort level. For some people, it's personal, that peace of mind to know when they go to sleep at night, I don't owe anything. Forgetting what we just talked about on the 401k, but that they don't have that debt on a mortgage. That can be a very personal thing, but if you've done proper planning and you have an income plan in place that's accounting for all of those things, and we do this and we can project out and look at, somebody might say, well, I'm going to retire in 2022. My mortgage isn't paid off till 2028. All of that is factored into the planning that we do to help them, not just to retirement, but all the way through retirement. So at some point, yeah, they're probably going to pay off their mortgage. Are you going to wait to retire? I don't think that's a reason to wait to retire.
well, and again, where I was kind of going as well is when interest rates were 8%, 10. I remember when mortgage rates were 14, 16, 18%. Yes, absolutely 100%. If you have a mortgage at that high of a rate, get that paid off as soon as possible. But now that rates are in the 2 to 3%, I'm just not as concerned about it at this interest rate. I think it had more to do with it became common practice with higher mortgage rates.
Tell you what, folks, Ken and Lori are going to accept some of your questions. If you're watching, number one, welcome. Number two, don't forget to share your questions, and we'll get to those a little bit past, half past. We've been talking about the myths of retirement, but I think right now a lot of people are looking at Washington, D.C., Lori and Ken, and wondering what action the White House, the Senate, and the House are going to take. It's hard to believe that taxes will be cut in this political climate. I think it's probably more likely that they'll go up, for some Americans anyway. What do you think today's retirees, or those who are approaching retirement, should consider in light of the likelihood that taxes are going to go up?
I'll jump out first and say that this is not a political statement. This has nothing to do with Republicans, nothing to do with Democrats. This has everything to do with the nasty 4-letter word. And it's a 4-letter word that I can say here. It's MATH. It's math. We have to look at what we've been spending. We have to look up at the amount that we've put on our government credit card, and we have to face the fact that we're going to have to increase our payments to that government credit card to get that paid down. And taxes mathematically will have to go up at some point in time. Now, that being said, we have to start thinking in terms of, if taxes are at a low point now, which they are, there's some great tax brackets, and you can proactively do some tax planning. And you can reposition assets from your bucket that says, I'm going to just kick that tax problem down the road. And a lot of financial advice comes out to say, spend your taxed money first, let your IRAs and 401ks grow until you have to take them, which is now age 72 for most people. And what happens is you get to age 72 and you start these distributions, and you're wearing a set of tax handcuffs. You're forced to take money regardless of whether you want it, need it. It's going to push you into a different tax bracket potentially. And now you've got all sorts of tax problems that you can no longer do anything about. So what we can do now are Roth conversions, right? We can do life insurance strategies through section 7702 of the tax code. There's a number of things that you can proactively do to readjust, but keep in mind that you always want to run those by a qualified tax advisor, because when you start getting into Roth conversions, there's a potential that you could lose some tax breaks. There's the potential you could pay more tax on your Social Security. You really could pay tax or some additional premiums on your Medicare premium. And you really want to be able to pay that tax outside of the IRA money. So it sounds easy, but it can get complicated, but that's why we're here to help people.
And that Roth IRA is a vehicle where you put money in after taxes and then it grows, we hope. In the future, you take it out and you don't have to pay taxes on it.
So it's kind of like paying tax on the seed, right? And not on the harvest.
Mhm.
And you know, we've talked about the 401ks, and sometimes for people, they don't even know that they've got a Roth option in their 401k. So maybe you are maxing out your contributions, and maybe the company's not doing a match. If they're not even matching, but they are offering you the Roth within that 401k, that's something to take a look at, because you really need to be, as Ken said, proactive and looking to build that tax-free bucket while you have that opportunity, and being really involved in looking at what your options are. A lot of people just kind of go casually and say, well, you know, I'll deal with this down the road. Don't wait. It's now is the opportunity. When this tax law sunsets in January of 2026, you can be sure there's going to be some significant changes. Who's going to be impacted, we don't know. But I don't really think that we're going to see taxes as low as this moving forward after that sunsets.
Oh, don't you, Lori, expect maybe some action before 2026?
Yes,
Definitely.
of course.
Definitely.
Yes.
I mean, it's in the works, and where we are now politically and with control of Congress and the House, yeah, I see the President Biden's package coming together, and I see that going through, I would say, fairly quickly.
Well, he has said that it'll affect Americans whose income exceeds $400,000 a year. What bracket is that? The 35 or 37%, something like that?
Yes.
And it was what, 39.6% before it was lowered, the top bracket that is, in 2017. So it's it's quite possible it'll go back up to that.
Oh yeah, and that's exactly what they're looking at. And keep in mind, go back to in the 1970s. The top tax bracket in the 1970s was 70%.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's why Ronald Reagan ran for office, I think, in the earlier days, because he was an actor paying that.
Yeah. And funny you mentioned Ronald Reagan, because in the 1940s, when Ronald Reagan was making movies, he would only make 2 movies a year. And it was because he got paid $100,000 per movie. And after $200,000 in the 1940s, the top federal tax bracket was 94%. And of course, he lived in California. So guess who got the other 6%?
Yeah.
He worked for free.
So he literally, if he would have made a third movie, would have worked for free.
Well, let me ask you now, you just mentioned what one might consider, given the possibility that taxes will go up. We have seen a little bit of inflation recently at the gas pump. We see it in some cases in our medical care. Some people think that with a strong demand for products and services, it's quite possible, if the supply of products and services don't increase, that the prices will go up. This is not an economics course, and I certainly wouldn't be one to teach it, but some people have said that the prices of services and goods could increase in the next couple of years. Inflation. Well, is there anything for a retiree or someone approaching retirement to consider with regard to the possible onset of inflation?
Number one, build inflation assumptions into your retirement income plan. I see a lot of people look at and say, well, okay, I need $50,000 a year. And they're looking at that as the same $50,000 over the course of the next 20 or 30 years. That's not going to fly very well. You have to increase that with an inflation rate. Now, that being said, there's a lot of things you spend money on early in your retirement that you don't spend as much later in retirement. And so the impact that inflation may have may not be quite as devastating, but you have to understand the things that are going to have higher inflation. Medical items. When we do our plans, we use a much higher rate for medical expenses than we do for ordinary day-to-day expenses. You mentioned, Charlie, the price of gas, and the price of gas basically has just gone back to where it was pre-COVID. When COVID hit and we stopped traveling, we stopped commuting to work, the demand for oil dropped so significantly that for the first time in history, the price of oil went negative. And we had very inexpensive gas for a while. So now that people are starting to kind of get back to moving again, the price is coming back up, which we would have expected. The other thing I see as you get into inflation, typically what happens when you have higher inflation is you have higher fixed interest rates. And so if you go back to remember the 70s and 80s where we had double-digit inflation, well, we also had double-digit interest rates. And if we were to hit some high inflation and the Fed combated that with higher interest rates, man, I'd be tickled pink to get a 10% bank CD right now, wouldn't you?
I'm old enough to remember when banks used to give you gifts if you would open an account, like
a toaster.
Toasters, right? Corningware.
The heated sleeping blanket, right?
Sure.
Corningware, forgot about that too. That's great.
Yeah, that's
We're
how I
dating
got
ourselves here.
Yeah, well, let me, Laura, you and I had an interesting conversation on Friday, and that is you and Ken have helped hundreds of people through the years. And so you've seen people approach retirement and you've seen people approach retirement, but there is kind of a psychological factor when one is retiring, and you have to kind of be ready for it. It's a little bit difficult to describe, but maybe you could tell those who are joining us right now, based on all the retirees that you've seen, some who've left work quickly, some who've eased into it, how does it work best in your view for someone who's thinking about retirement?
Well, I mean, for us, we're all thinking about retirement. At some point in our working years, whether you're 25 or you're 30 or you're 50, you're always thinking at some point, I can't wait to retire. And it's not that simple. I mean, there's so much planning that really needs to go into it. The time to start thinking about retirement is not a month before you're putting in your notice and saying, I'm retiring. Because yes, while the financial end of it is extremely important, and it's paramount that you understand how you're going to generate, as Ken says, income, there's also a huge change that happens psychologically. You're accustomed to 30 or 40 years of going to this job, whether you've had the same job or you've changed jobs. You work with people that you enjoy, that maybe you have lunch with, and you have a purpose, Charlie, every day to get up, to do something, to go to work. And while you might be thinking, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to retire, it is still a huge change that we have to adapt to emotionally, psychologically. And you suddenly wake up. We just had one of our clients recently retire, and I sent her an email congratulating her. And she said, well, let's see how Monday goes when I wake up and I don't have any place to go. And while the excitement and the enthusiasm is there, there's still that feeling of you wake up and you go, wow, what do I do today? So not only preparing financially, but preparing yourself to say, what am I going to do to fill these 2,500 hours that I've been doing for all of these years? What is going to fulfill me? Is it volunteering? Do I want to work part-time? Do I want to take care of my grandchildren? What is it that you have planned so that you don't suddenly find yourself sitting there saying, oh, maybe this wasn't a good idea. I have no idea what to do.
Now we understand why Brett Favre retired multiple times.
Well, there was a lawyer in town, maybe you knew him, Christian Pieper, who worked at Pieper Martin. I forget what the firm is known as now. It might be Hush Blackwell, but he worked till the age of 100. I guess retirement was not for him. 70 years as an attorney, but
wow.
That's kind of few and far between. Are there resources or books that help people in this area, the psychological side?
I've really not seen any.
I haven't either, to be honest.
No. It's kind of that unspoken territory that everybody's just so excited to, we've set this stage in society that you get to a certain age and you're supposed to be excited to retire. I don't see that. I love what I do. I love the social interaction with all of our families on a regular basis. I would find it hard to walk away and have to kind of create another type of a life. Now, does that mean I'm going to work as hard as I do today for the rest of my life? No, right? You blend in and you enjoy more of life without having to fully retire. That's my personal goal.
And maybe too, some of the fear of that and that psychological shift is not having the confidence that you have a solid retirement plan. If you're confident that the plan you have in place, not just income planning, your investment planning, your healthcare planning, your tax planning, your legacy planning, if that's important to you, if you are confident that all of those pieces to your retirement plan are in place, I think that peace of mind and that comfort is going to come much easier. Although it's still a transition, you still need to have that confidence. And that's what we do every day working with our families, is trying to really create that confidence that not only are we going to help them get to retirement, we're going to work with you through retirement, work on this plan every single year and revisit and making sure that this plan is going to work.
And as a matter of fact, it's a nice bonus for watching our seminar on the St. Charles City County Library Facebook page. Everyone joining us can get a free consultation, and they need to call your office, I think, or maybe log online to get more details about that, maybe schedule a 30-minute appointment, something like that.
Sure. Yeah, they can go to the website. It's Heise, Heise, advisorygroup.com. You can also go to the radio show website, yourretirementhighway.com, and there'll be a page there that you can just look at our calendar and click into a 30-minute phone consultation, right? And,
well,
and by the way, you can today is the official launch of our podcast, Your Retirement Navigator, launched today. So we have that as well.
And do we access that through Apple, Spotify, all the usual?
All the usuals, yes. It'll take several days, I think, for Apple to pick up on it and so forth. But I think Google picks up pretty much within the day or so. But I would say its official launch date was today, so I would give it maybe by the end of the week. Hopefully it'll be on all the regular services.
And that's Your Retirement Navigator.
Correct.
Excellent, excellent. The newest podcast. Well, my goodness, you guys are so busy. I know you've got your practice, your radio show, your podcast, and later this month, a television program on Channel 4.
Yes, we're excited. I believe that's Sunday, the 25th of April will be our inaugural show. So we're excited about that. I've been doing this, Charlie, for 31 years and have been blessed immensely through this process and have worked with a tremendous number of wonderful people. This is my time of life where I get to give back, doing things like this for the library, doing the TV show for education, doing the radio show, doing the podcast. It's really to get good quality information on retirement planning. As I said earlier, this isn't mom and dad's retirement. It is so different today. And being that we've helped hundreds of people, we take that experience and we use it to help other people. Anytime you do something for the first time, it's usually not your best.
No, that's true. And I do appreciate you sharing the advice with us on this Facebook Live event, because for you, I know it's, you know it, it's on the back of your hand, you know it well. For the rest of us, there is a steep learning curve and we have to hear it again and again before we understand it. So we appreciate that. If Elizabeth Nelson has some questions from our viewing audience, we can take some of those now.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm unmuted here. Yes, I do actually. So our first question here is from Maureen. And she wondered if you were close to 60-ish and just got off the tuition train, what would be the best place to stockpile for retirement? Roth IRA, deferred comp plan at work, government employee. Thanks much.
Well, here's the first thing that I have to, from our legal compliance people, is to disclose we cannot give financial advice directly here this evening because we really don't know your full situation. But let me say that I would tend to look toward the Roth IRA as an example, because I believe building tax-free money for the future is going to be important. The deferred comp, that again is deferring taxes to a future date. So much of it depends on where you are currently. It's not just about age. It's about where you are, what you've saved, and how much you have in other deferred programs. There's so many other factors that kind of go into that to really get to the root of that. That's where the personal one-on-ones come in a little better.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, Maureen. And then we have another question from Chester, and that is, are reverse mortgages a last resort type of thing?
And you want to answer it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how I would answer that other than say we don't really work with that type of situation. Obviously, if you're in a position where you need to do a reverse mortgage, that's some tough retirement planning.
It's to me a last resort.
Yeah.
Definitely a last resort.
Okay.
And a reverse mortgage is what? Just a general definition for our viewers?
Well, that's where you're getting the equity back out of your house to use it to live on, and without getting real deep into that, it's not something that's on our recommended list.
Very well.
I have a follow-up question and a few questions from your talk here, and then from your book here, The Retirement Highway. As I said, it's available at Mainstream Books and then also at our library. And the links are in the comments here. So I think you had mentioned like a tax advisor, and then we have this question here on reverse mortgages. You are fiduciary advisors, correct? And so my question is kind of how do you decide on an advisor, and kind of how many different ones should you maybe meet with? Do you need a few different types of advisors, or should you just pick one and go with that advisor?
Well, let me kind of rephrase first off. The term fiduciary advisor is probably not the most accurate.
Okay.
You're an advisor that is obligated to act as a fiduciary on behalf of the client and do what's in their best interest. It's a legal requirement, the fiduciary standard. There's also a suitability standard that's out there in the financial world. And the suitability standard doesn't have to put the best interest of the client first. It just has to be a suitable recommendation based on their age, their income, and their situation. It doesn't have to be the best solution. So I really emphasize the fact that you look to find somebody that is bound by that fiduciary standard. And how many you interview, I guess anytime that I have chosen a physician that I've needed, I've never gone out and interviewed 6 different doctors to pick which one I kind of like or feel the best about, or maybe that you tend to look for somebody that wants to maybe think more like you think, and that's not really what you want. You want someone that has a tremendous amount of experience converting people from their working years to their retirement years. I would also make sure there are 3 worlds that money lives in. You've got the banking world, you've got the insurance world, and you've got the Wall Street world. And I would make sure that whoever you're going to work with is open to all three worlds of money, because all three worlds have tremendous solutions for a retirement plan. They don't all fit in at one time. They don't always fit in, but anytime you have an advisor that is going to be closed-minded to any one of those worlds, I think you're going to get cheated out of some potential solutions that could be in your best interest.
And I also think it's really important that you have a connection. We are very selective on the families we like to work with because we look for long-term relationships, Elizabeth. We're not looking, for just a quick fix. We want to work with our families, and I've said this repeatedly, not just to retirement, but through their retirement. We look for long-term relationships. We want to be a part of your family. We want you to be a part of our family. We want to get to know all about your family, what's important to you. There's a lot of time and work that goes into this. And, for you, you want that personal connection. People hopefully only retire one time, and you want to make sure that you're getting this right the first time and having that connection. And I'm kind of a gut person. I know if I meet somebody, if I have that good feeling about them. And I think that sometimes it's just a matter of, yes, we can share our wealth of knowledge and years of experience, but if there's not a connection, in the end, somewhere down the road, you're going to go find somebody else. I mean, that's just the way it is. If you love the person you work with and you trust and know that they're putting together a good plan, I think that's really the premise of a long-term relationship there.
If I may, maybe I jump in because I also picked up your Retirement Highway, How to Set Your Finances on Cruise Control. I didn't know it was at Main Street Books in St. Charles, but I love that bookstore, and hello to everybody out there. There was a very interesting small section you have where it's the biggest mistakes that people make in retirement. I think there's two of them that I recall. One is investing, Lori and Ken, as if they are still working. What do you mean by that?
Well, during your working years, your number one goal for your money is growth. You want that money to grow as much as possible, so you're focused completely on rate of return and grow, because you're wanting to amass this pile of money that you can then rely upon for the rest of your life in retirement. Now, when you retire, that focus really should no longer be growth. It should be to protect and preserve, create cash flow, and then growth. So I didn't say growth is no longer important. It just steps and takes a back seat to making sure that you don't take major losses in your portfolio. And that happens by really focusing on managing volatility as opposed to managing returns. So you want a portfolio that has a more narrow range of returns in order to keep the volatility lower. I kind of talk in terms of, I want your retirement to be exciting. I want your investment portfolio to be a little bit more boring, stable, consistent, regular returns, right? Because if you have a really exciting portfolio, when we have the market crashes like we had in 07 to 09, like we had in 01 to 02, your retirement could turn out to be rather boring.
But this ties into what we were talking about before, Charlie, about psychological, because there's also a psychological shift that has to happen. You have to think differently. You aren't in that accumulation phase of your life anymore. You are now in your income, your distribution phase of life. And so, and most people eventually get there, but it's shifting their mind thinking, okay, at all costs, it's not about growth. Yes, you still want growth, but it becomes about preservation and distribution as you get into and approach retirement.
Do the rules change a little bit if your client is, let's say, a retired teacher from the Missouri public school system, where he or she has a nice pension, after
Mhm.
33 years of work?
It has an impact, but again, it depends on what that personal spend is. What is
Sure,
that
of
dream?
course. Sure.
That pension could be a really nice pension, but it could only be maybe 30% of what they want to spend. But if it's more than they need to spend, right? If your pension's more than your spend, then you can look at your portfolio differently as well. Yes.
The second biggest mistake people make in retirement is not taking proactive steps to prevent a big drop in the portfolio. Flesh that out a little bit.
Okay.
It's about taking control of downside risk. And that's one of the things that I think is probably the most outstanding lesson learned as folks have come in to meet with us. Because I love to have a conversation. There's several things that come into play here. One is sequence of returns. In the book, I forget the page number, but in the book, there's a couple of charts between two gentlemen. We gave them both 8% returns, and we had them take the same income off the same amount of money. And one of them finishes his retirement with a boatload of money, and the other one runs out of money simply because of the sequence of when losses happened. And when losses happen early on, it can be very, very devastating that you may not recover. And if you start to have some sequences of reverse dollar cost averaging, for example, as the markets are going down and you're taking money away from that portfolio for income, that repeated process will eventually wear your portfolio down. And hence we get the number one fear of retired people is running out of money.
Well, and we also find too, Charlie, so many of the families that come in to visit with us have no idea the risk that's in their existing portfolios, particularly if most of their savings is in a 401k. They just contribute. They don't really pay attention. Maybe they're picking holdings in there that their coworker has, or maybe they just really didn't have any involvement at all. And it's interesting, once we do the assessment, so many families are just shocked to understand that they had no idea the risk that was in their portfolio. And managing that risk is really paramount as you're preparing and in retirement.
Well, and part of that's just natural due to the fact that we've had such a huge market increase over the last number of years, that if you're not proactively rebalancing your portfolio, you're automatically going to inherently increase the risk in your portfolio because your stock portion has grown so much relative to the other parts of the portfolio.
Now, I always knew what dollar cost averaging is by putting money into the market at a regular interval, same amount of money over a period of time. But until I listened to the two of you, I didn't know about reverse dollar cost averaging. And we only have a few minutes to go. Can you kind of give us just a broad outline of what that is and what the implications are for the retiree?
Sure. So again, as the market goes through the ups and down cycles, when you're putting money into your portfolio like a 401k every other week, you're buying through all the ups and all the downs of the market. And when the market's high, you're buying very few shares, but when the markets are down, you're buying more shares. And as you're accumulating your wealth, that grows your portfolio. That's the dollar cost averaging, Charlie, that you were aware of. But now just let's reverse engines here a minute. We're retired. Now we've got all the money in the 401k and we're taking income from it. So when the market's high, what are we doing? We're taking very few of those good expensive shares, but when the market's down, we have to take a lot more of those shares. And in the end, what drove your portfolio up drives your portfolio down, hence the concept. It's called reverse, the backwards way of dollar cost averaging. And it can have very detrimental impacts. And what happens is everybody always says, don't worry when the markets are down because the markets always come back, right? You've always heard that. Hang in there, don't make any changes, the market comes back. But I can show you that if you're using a full market portfolio, how actually reverse dollar cost averaging can prevent your portfolio from coming back. The market comes back, but your portfolio may never come back because of the income that you're taking from those assets.
You know, we have a few minutes to go, and I'm sure that some of our viewers are also concerned about Washington and what might happen with how much money one can leave to heirs without that being gobbled up by Uncle Sam. Do you folks know off the top of your head what the current rule is and what the talk might be in Washington, D.C.? Or are they going to lower the amount of money that I can give to my kids without them paying taxes on it?
Well, the current rule is over $11 million per person. So most of us aren't it's called the federal gift and estate tax. That's the big long name of that tax.
Mm-hmm.
So of recent years, that hasn't come into play for a lot of people. Now, that being said, they're looking to increase taxes. And yes, I'm convinced that they will reduce that. I think one of the reasons that I can see that they do that is, generally speaking, dead people don't vote. So when you take people's money after they've died, you really don't know it, right? But I think there's a lot of things coming into play. They're talking about like capital gains. Currently, if you die with a capital gain, you get stepped up basis to the beneficiary. They're talking about taking that away and taxing that stepped up basis. There's a lot of wild cards in there. I tend to be careful about not trying to guess what they're going to do because my crystal ball broke years ago. I just know the consistency of the thought process is we're going to increase taxes. We're going to increase taxes. That provides us a sale on taxes right now, and I like buying up my tax payments today.
Well, you know, also we hear word that they might change the rules on the donor advised fund, which is an IRS vehicle allowing you to put money into a fund, take the tax break this year, and then make your contributions to charity this year, next year, or whenever you want. And then some in Washington are saying, you know what, we need that money now. We'll give them, instead of forever, we'll give them 5 years or 10 years to make those charitable donations. Do you see something like that as a possible change?
Anything possible, right?
Anything with our government's possible. When you're almost $30 trillion in debt, not including all the unfunded liabilities, I would say anything's on the table for right now.
If you really want to mess up your day, go to usdebtclock.org, and you can see our national debt live growing, and you can see the complete total of unfunded liabilities is now over $160 trillion.
Oh, that's Social Security, Medicare, and everything else, huh?
Yes.
Right.
Well, that sounds like a fun clock to take a look at. Okay, so here's the deal. If folks would like a complimentary consultation with you, Lori and Ken, they must contact Heise Advisory Group by phone or log on to the website.
Yes, that would.
Then
if they log on to the site, they can click on our calendar, schedule a call. They can fill out some information and have one of our staff, Cameron, would reach back out. Whatever's easiest.
And we also have a lot of other great resources that are there that they can use as well.
And then, of course, your new podcast, which you debuted today. Congratulations and best wishes with that. It's Your Retirement Navigator. Every Sunday morning at 9:30 on KMOX Radio. That's 11:20 a.m. And, of course, you can stream that. And then also, of course, later this month on KMOV, we'll see more of Ken and Heise. They used to call Howard Stern the king of all media, but I think it's Ken and Lori Heise because you got the book as well. So
He's a good
congratulations.
teacher, right?
And thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us. And thank you, Elizabeth, for being such a wonderful host for us on this evening.
Yes,
It's absolutely a pleasure.
Yes, thank you for having us. Happy to share and help as many people as we possibly can.
It's very informative. Thank you.
Yes, thank you
Thank
all
you.
three of you for spending your evening with us. Again, Ken, as Charlie said, the podcast, the radio show, all of that is available, and the website is in the comments below, Heise Advisory, for you to click on and schedule a free appointment. Their book is also available, as we've said, at Main Street Books and in our collection. We hope you've had a wonderful evening. We've got more Money Smart Mondays with Charlie coming up. There will be one next Monday at the 12th, and then we'll skip a week and we'll be back on the 26th. Both are at 7 p.m. on the library's Facebook page right here. On the 12th, we'll have Adam Grossman and Brad Stinn, who'll be here to give advice on accumulating wealth. And then on the 26th, we'll have Ron Lieber, a New York Times personal finance columnist and the author of The Price You Pay for College, an entirely new roadmap for the biggest financial decision your family will ever make. Please join us. The links to those events are also in the comments, and shortly you will see a feedback survey as well about tonight's Money Smart Month event. We'd love to hear what you think we should keep doing and what we can do to improve. Everyone that completes the survey, if you include your email address, will be entered into a drawing for a $50 gift card. A total of 5 gift cards will be given away based on a random drawing from the survey respondents. You'll be notified by May 14th. And finally, our branches have reopened for browsing, so please stop by if you'd like. If you'd prefer, we do have curbside options for all of them as well. So thank you again for joining us, and have a wonderful evening.